Hello, and welcome to this hopefully pretty short video. In my efforts to make a Battle Royale video for every continent, we arrive at Oceania, and you can see I've already divided up Australia into its states and territories, because it's just impossible to have all these little islands and make an interesting video, so I'm just going to group all of these together to Pacific Islands, have New Zealand, the Australian states, and Papua New Guinea. Hopefully that's not too upsetting to anyone watching this. If you're from any of these islands, you can still root for the islands as a whole. But with that, let's get right into it. Victoria will be facing a rebellion. So I used to be giving a lot of explanations for how this world got to be how it is at the start of each video. I haven't really been doing that more recently. Um, but somehow Australia broke them into states, and in doing so, and you notice that New South Wales took the ACT, and they are trying to inspire a rebellion against Victoria so that the Victorian government will be more aligned to them. And so they do that. And in the western parts of Victoria, it's very successful. But Victoria will be fighting against the rebellion. And unfortunately for New South Wales, Victoria will be successful in defeating it, and they don't officially ever go to war with each other. So now they just have very hostile relations. New South Wales will be making an alliance with Southern Australia. This will be the Orange Alliance, and they have a common enemy in Victoria, which is why they made this alliance in the first place. They both want to get rid of Victoria. The Pacific Islands will be invading Northwest. So they will be invading into Papua New Guinea on the justification that these two islands have wanted, or that this group of islands has wanted independence for a while, and hasn't been given it, even though they were promised it. So it's mostly the Solomon Islands, I believe, is this island chain. I might be wrong, but I think this Solomon Islands are mostly behind it, but like Fiji, New Caledonia, which is owned by France, all of these islands are in some way part of it, but it's mostly Solomon Islands who are doing it. Anyways, they land troops on these islands, as the people on these islands are also just constantly in rebellion, and Queensland is threatening to get involved in this war if Papua New Guinea doesn't just settle it, so they decide to just give the territories up. So that was pretty simple. Pacific Islands will be facing a rebellion. This whole union thing isn't going very well, and specifically New Caledonia doesn't really like being part of this whole Pacific Islands union. And so they will start rebelling, and control of the island is pretty easy for them to get. They seize naval access around there. Papua New Guinea then joins the war and starts taking back these islands. It's a very hard-fought battle. But just when you thought it couldn't get any worse, Queensland will also join against the Pacific Islands, and Fiji will also rebel. And the Pacific Islands are just falling apart, as this island chain, which I don't know what it is. I think this is multiple countries right here, fall to Queensland forces, as Papua New Guinea gets all its land back and starts invading to the Solomon Islands, which is really the power base of the whole Pacific thing. And eventually they're fully taken. So let's see what the peace treaty looks like. Okay, I've colored Papua New Guinea in gray, so they get the Solomon Islands. Queensland gets nothing, and the Pacific Islands are still a thing right here with a new government under Fiji and Nova Scotia. Not Nova Scotia, New Caledonia. Queensland will be invading North. So despite having just fought a war together, someone is paying Queensland to immediately go back and attack Papua New Guinea, and so they do. And they start landing troops on the southern part of the island, and there's dense jungle warfare. It's very difficult for them to invade. But the Papua army is just not sufficiently trained enough for this to be a losing battle for Queensland. And then it's revealed the country that was paying them was pretty understandably the Pacific Islands. I'm just going to color in New Caledonia and Fiji, even though there's other islands as well. They start seizing the Solomon Islands back. They want them under their control, and they pretty quickly get them, after which these islands rebel from Papua New Guinea to try and get their own thing, but they won't end up getting it. And it's a very hard-fought battle that probably takes the next few events. So actually, let's do something I haven't done in a while. Let's do another event while this war is going on. Victoria will invade North. So while this war is going on, Victoria will fight a completely separate war against New South Wales and Southern Australia. Their justification for this was that Western Australia had agreed to do a war only if it started right then, because Western Australia basically had a guy who was about to lose an election, and he thought maybe a war could help him win an election. So Western Australia starts invading into Southern Australia, and Western Australia is way more powerful than Southern Australia, so this is going pretty well. And Southern Australia is also losing on this front, but New South Wales is just clobbering Victoria, and the front lines look like this. Let's check up on the other war, where Papua New Guinea is continuing to lose land, but it's a very slow-going process that might even take another event to fully finish. The war in the rest of Australia is still going on. The push is made by Victoria up towards Adelaide, which almost gets it taken, but it isn't. And another separate push makes Victoria happy by getting them most of their territory back before New South Wales makes naval landings around Melbourne, which is right over here, I think, and just kind of undoes all of their progress. Western Australia is really doing the bulk of the work, and that guy won his election, which means that one of the main things that was keeping Southern Australia in the war is gone, and they leave the war without New South Wales' content. Victoria withdraws all their troops. Technically, they're still part of the Orange Alliance, so I should keep them, but they're not in the war anymore. From there, and it allows them to keep fighting up here, and it's around this time that Papua New Guinea is finally fully defeated, and they will be fully annexed into Queensland, with the Solomon Islands going to the Pacific Islands. This war is continuing to go on, and Victoria is doing better, but they're still weaker than New South Wales, and Western Australia is basically out of the war as well. In fact, I'm going to just show them as out of the war. They've made a peace agreement here, which I'll show after the war's over. So it looks like Victoria might lose. They try to get Queensland involved, but Queensland just got out of a war. They try to get Tasmania involved. It doesn't work, so eventually they surrender. Okay, these are the new borders of Southern Australia. And by that, I don't mean this. I mean, like, the whole region. Southeastern Australia, I should say. Southern Australia will be invading Northwest. So Southern Australia and Northern Australia are getting into a war. Basically, there was just like a verbal fight between these guys. Southern Australia asked New South Wales for permission, and they are going to invade Northern Australia. Northern Territory, whatever. And pretty quickly, two former enemies are now fighting on the same side of a war, just trying to get rid of Northern Australia. Northern Australia pretty much doesn't have a chance because neither party is going to be willing to accept a surrender unless the other party is also involved, but also not going to be involved in the other party's surrender. Basically, the Orange Alliance and Perth won't agree with each other. They're honestly skirming with each other in Northern Australia. So there's just no way that an agreement will ever be made between the two of them. And eventually Northern Australia will succumb to them, and they're going to have to make an agreement between themselves, which is going to be hard enough, but Northern Australia couldn't have ever surrendered even if they wanted to. And of course, the border they eventually end up agreeing upon is a straight line border. Tasmania will be making an alliance with the Pacific Islands. And the reason for this alliance is just that they want to protect each other, and so it's going to be the Green Alliance. Victoria will be invading West. Victoria is on a quest for revenge, and number one on that list is Western Australia. So they were invading west into Western Australia, trying to get New South Wales not to get involved, but of course they do get involved. And Victoria starts getting pushed back. Even Tasmania starts getting a hit of this, because why not? Taking Melbourne. And overall, Victoria never really stood a chance to begin with. This is the division of Victoria. Let's continue. New South Wales will be invading southeast. So submarines from New South Wales will be detected by the New Zealand Navy and shot down over here in international waters between them, which prompts New South Wales to declare war on New Zealand, and obviously their ally will join them. And they start by trying actually to take the less populated southern island, because they want to just show New Zealand who's boss and hopefully get them to surrender. But New Zealand will fight back, and unfortunately for New South Wales, they were underestimating New Zealand as they get fully pushed off of the islands. And Tasmania uses this as justification to declare war on New South Wales, which their allies in the Pacific Islands don't like, but can't really do anything about because Tasmania did it. And Victoria's kind of letting this happen because they didn't like being annexed. New Zealand will then land troops in New South Wales before getting pushed out. And it's only when Queensland actually like gets involved in the war that things start really turning around for for New South Wales, as Tasmania gets cornered around Melbourne, and after a long siege, it gets taken, after which they leave the war, bringing Melbourne over to New South Wales. Meanwhile, another landing is made on New Zealand, this time at Auckland, to try and actually take it, and it is taken. Not without a fight, of course, but I'm trying to speed this up, so it is eventually taken. And with this, New Zealand will get spooked, but they're still holding out until the capital, Wellington, is also threatened, at which point they officially surrender. And New South Wales will actually opt to take the southern island instead of the northern island because they figure they can get more out of the southern island and with less chance of rebellion. So they take it. Queensland and Western Australia get nothing and are kind of bitter about having gotten nothing. So that might change stuff in the future, but let's keep going. New South Wales will invade North. Queensland is very upset at New South Wales, and they basically continue making threats at them, saying, like, we're going to invade you, blah, blah, blah. And eventually New South Wales just snaps and starts invading into Queensland. Their pal Southern Australia also starts invading into Queensland, but not as much as they probably should, because they're also kind of mad at New South Wales for taking all the glory. At this point, New Zealand will come back into retake Christchurch, which I think is about here. And with that, the southern island will kind of just start falling pretty quickly because there's not enough people here to defend it. New South Wales wasn't that focused on defending it. And eventually they'll just give up this island in exchange for not having to fight New Zealand anymore. In Papua New Guinea, yet another forest battle is happening where the Pacific Islands are taking back the forests. And this time it's actually going really well for them, as the Papuan people prefer to be owned by the Pacific Islands to Queensland. And it's still like a jungle war that'll probably take way longer than I'm showing here, but I'm trying to speed this up because I want you to see who wins this series. I actually don't know who's going to win yet, but basically these guys are annexed into the Pacific Islands. Meanwhile, Tasmania makes another landing at Melbourne, makes New South Wales really try invading into Tasmania, but it doesn't really work. And they get pushed out, but they push Tasmania out of the continent, and then they just have a silent truce. At this point, Queensland has been at war for a very long time with New South Wales, and I'm actually going to do another event. Let's see what happens. Queensland will invade Northeast. So Queensland will attempt to get their Papuan territories back. This is probably as the war is still going on in Papua. And they land troops here. But the attempt to do that front was a really bad idea because at this point Southern Australia is all in. And Queensland starts losing a lot of their less valuable territories over here. Eventually they have to recall all of their troops from Papua New Guinea. And at this point they will surrender. And these are the new borders of what used to be Queensland. Western Australia will be invading south. It's becoming clear to everyone at this point the Orange Alliance is a threat that needs to be stopped, so the rest of Australia will team up to take them out, and it will start with a clever invasion coming south by the Navy and landing here, which I don't think is actually like a populated area, so they're just gonna like be able to take it. As this little corridor that New South Wales got is taken, and the entire northern coast of Australia is taken. Meanwhile, Tasmania makes another landing at Melbourne, this time staying permanently, because the armies were focused up north, taking out Queensland and also Western Australia, but they weren't expecting Tasmania to make yet another landing. So they have some troops to deal with this, but not enough to actually get them all the way out of Melbourne. So this is what it currently looks like. Then New Zealand gets involved in the war, and it's literally everyone versus the Orange Alliance now, which is probably not going to go well for the Orange Alliance, as Tasmania is invading Queensland, gets their territory back, and the Orange Alliance needs a miracle right now to stay in this war. But this war has been going on for a pretty long time, so let's actually roll the event wheel, because why not? Queensland will invade West. Nothing too fabulous is happening. Queensland just makes another invasion west that is pretty successful. In fact, it's very successful in that it closes off a lot of territory. Unfortunately for Tasmania, they made a huge logistical failure and got pushed all the way off the continent, and even had some of their islands taken that aren't Tasmania, and a landing is even made on their main island. New Zealand is trying to take Sydney and being repelled a bunch, but they do make landings in Victoria, which are then repelled. And eventually, Southern Australia, independently of New South Wales, decides to just surrender and leave the war, in exchange for just keeping all their territory, and also they aren't allowed to tell New South Wales they're doing this, and New South Wales doesn't actually know this is happening until they basically use spies to figure it out. They've also withdrawn their troops from here. Tasmania once again sends troops onto Melbourne, but this time not into Southern Australia. That's one of the things that helps New South Wales figure out they're being betrayed by their only ally, and eventually New South Wales will surrender. Okay, so here's the treaty. New Zealand gets this territory. This is New South Wales. They're still in it. The Orange Alliance is forcibly dissolved so that Southern Australia can get this territory, and then Queensland gets most of its territory back. Queensland will invade East. Queensland is really upset with the Pacific Islands. They're trying to get their territories back. They keep trying to get their territories back. Maybe this will be the time. The problem is their people are tired of war. So when they make landings on New Caledonia and take the island, there's protests. Their government is being protested all throughout the eastern coast of Queensland. New South Wales will capitalize on this rebellion to start a southern invasion back into Queensland, after which Queensland starts getting invaded from the north by Pacific Islands, and New Caledonia is retaken, and at this point Queensland will surrender. This is the division of Queensland. They still exist. I think they still have Brisbane, but I might be wrong. I think it's around here. Let's just assume that if they wouldn't have it, then there's like an exclave for the city in New South Wales. But they're very small, and they don't really have that much power anymore. This war really crippled them. Southern Australia will be invading south. Australia wants Tasmania to leave Melbourne alone. Unfortunately, Melbourne actually prefers Tasmania to being under basically any other power that exists. So they're going to face fierce resistance in Melbourne and kill like 10 times as many civilians as they do soldiers. And Tasmania is going to really use this as justification for the entire world to turn against Southern Australia. And they'll get a few countries to join them, namely Queensland and New Zealand, as well as obviously their ally, as the Pacific Islands make landings in Northern Australia, and it goes pretty well, taking over the coast. Queensland makes a massive gambit, which actually works really well over here, solidifying a front line like this, while with logistics help from Perth, new troops are spotted over here from Pacific Islands, and maybe even some troops from Perth happen to be in on this. I'll just color them in, but it's not really Perth troops. It's just like they're kind of helping with it. Melbourne is retaken by Tasmania, and Southern Australia starts to be invaded. And right as they're about to surrender, Perth officially joins the war and basically steamrolls all the way to Adelaide to make sure that the government just basically is forced to resign in handcuffs. and the government doesn't really exist anymore, so they technically surrender, but they're going to be fully divided up. Okay, these are the new borders of Australia. Pacific Islands will be invading west. So despite just having fought a war together, the Pacific Islands do not like Western Australia, neither does Tasmania, and so the both of them will basically just march troops into Western Australia. Adelaide is quickly taken by Tasmania and Tasmanian troops. And a lot of the South Australian army is basically repurposed by the Green Alliance to go against Perth and its Western Australia. A lot of these northern territories are just sparsely controlled and not really militarily defended, so Pacific Islands can easily take this. Eventually, Queensland will also get in on this, invading into Western Australia to try and get some more territory, and it works pretty well for them. And Western Australia doesn't want to be fully destroyed, so they will surrender. And these are the new borders of Australia. Western Australia will be invading southeast. They're immediately bloodthirsty for revenge. And as soon as the treaty is signed, a new guy's elected into office who basically says that we're still at war with them, and pretty quickly actually does really well because Queensland and Pacific Islands are not really willing to go back to war, and the people here are not really caring about which side they're on, but they aren't helping Tasmania defend themselves. Then New South Wales gets in on the war and quickly besieges Melbourne before taking a lot of territories in here. Pacific Islands is invading into Perth, which is going pretty well for them, but they can't really attack New South Wales, so they just don't. Melbourne actually falls this time. After enough times of being besieged, they just don't care anymore. And after Tasmania sees the writing on the wall that they are not going to be able to keep their territories on the Australian continent, they will surrender. Oh, and as part of the surrender treaty, Western Australia gets to keep all that. New South Wales will invade west. A lot of betraying former allies in this episode, video, whatever. And remember, Pacific Islander troops would still be like all throughout here, so they like hadn't pulled out yet. And basically, New South Wales sends their troops that were kind of already here and just doesn't give Perth the territory they were promised, which obviously counts as an act of war. And actually, Tasmania will side with them against Perth, making a landing all the way over here, trying to get Perth out. And Perth moves a lot of their army west to deal with that. I keep calling them Perth. They're Western Australia, but that's like where all of their population is. Anyway, Queensland joins this war. And once again, Western Australia is isolated. No one likes them. And they get invaded like this by the Pacific Islands. Their southern coast is taken by the Red Allies. Tasmania helps with the landing at Perth that actually is successful. And the rest of Western Australia will be cleaned up shortly. Yeah, this might be the most ugly peace treaty I've ever made, but they agreed to use straight lines, and they agreed to use these straight lines. So, yeah. New Zealand will be facing a rebellion. This is a fairly simple one. They face a rebellion in Victoria, and Victoria gains their independence from New Zealand. I doubt they'll go anywhere with it, but it's still nice. New Zealand will be making an alliance with the Pacific Islands. So, following that rebellion, New Zealand joins the Green Alliance to ensure nothing bad happens to them in the future. New South Wales will be invading east. So, New South Wales and the Pacific Islands have some beef they need to sort out. So, New Caledonia is once again invaded. You'll remember Queensland did this before, and Queensland was 100% on board with this happening. They were actually one of the reasons it happened. They wanted to distract Pacific Islands so that they could start taking up this territory, which was completely undefended, and so they do, without really provoking a war. Meanwhile, the actual territories of the Pacific Islands are being taken pretty quickly by some of the powerful countries. New Zealand really wants to stop this, but they have a hard time doing so. Like, Melbourne is taken, but then Victoria joins in on the war and retakes Melbourne and even makes some landings over here. At this point, the Pacific Islands really just have no choice but to surrender, so they do. This is the result of that. These Pacific Islands belong to New South Wales. This territory that I forgot to merge with Queensland is part of Queensland. And Victoria was given a little reward for fighting against Tasmania. Tasmania will be uniting northeast. So Tasmania will actually unite with Victoria. Victoria will be invading west. So they're invading into New South Wales. And Queensland is pretty quickly going to help their ally. It's an unofficial ally, but it's still an ally, out by basically threatening Pacific Islands with another invasion, so they don't do anything. New Zealand tries to help, and actually that's where the war starts off. But unfortunately, after here, that's where the war starts off. But unfortunately, New South Wales is just too powerful, and Victoria is taken, and then after that happens, Tasmania will surrender. Pacific Islands will be making an alliance with New South Wales. So in a shocking betrayal of Queensland, New South Wales will join the Green Alliance in the hopes of taking out Queensland, and if they take out Queensland, they'll basically be guaranteed to win the series, so that's the idea, or the video. New Zealand will be making an alliance with Queensland. New Zealand will be betraying the Green Alliance and making a mustard yellow alliance with Queensland, in basically direct opposition to the alliance between Pacific Islands and New South Wales and Tasmania. Tasmania will be invading north. So in a shocking betrayal, Tasmania, probably egged on by the Mustard Alliance, will invade into their former ally of New South Wales, mostly into Victoria, trying to get them to inspire rebellion. Meanwhile, Queensland will start invading into the western parts of New South Wales and taking them fairly easily, all the way up to here. Pacific Islands, on the other hand, will start attacking the main parts of Queensland, but Queensland has already fled their government far from there. So now it's just like Western Australia, but it's technically Queensland. New Zealand will try making landings at Sydney but fail, so instead they'll land over here and over here. They'll also seize the Pacific Island holdings of New South Wales before things stop over here. Victoria will start being pushed back, as well as this entire New Zealand thing here. And Western Australia will also start getting pushed back, or I guess it's Queensland, as they eventually have to move their army to the Eastern Front. But meanwhile, Tasmania has just been taken out of the war. New Zealand kind of signs a silent peace treaty, and Queensland obviously surrenders. And this is the result of that. It's fairly certain which alliance is going to win. Tasmania has been fully destroyed. New South Wales will invade east into New Zealand, I'm guessing. And this time it's not as big of a problem, as they take the southern island and basically blockade the northern island until they cave in and surrender. And while they're at it, they and Pacific Islands take Queensland. And Queensland was given to Pacific Islands in exchange for New Zealand going to New South Wales. Pacific Islands will be invading south. Let's see how well this goes. Okay, so they will start invading south. Going pretty well for them. And then Brisbane has been taken. It's not good. That was their biggest city, I think. Actually, it's probably not. It's probably like... No, that has to have been the biggest city. Things are not going very well. Turns out they had a pretty pitiful army that was just being boosted by New South Wales. Solomon Islands, their main base of power, taken. These islands are taken, and although it'll be a long thing, Papua New Guinea is also taken. Okay, so the winner of the game is New South Wales. Probably the most powerful one to begin with, but I mean, it makes sense that they would win. Uh, so with that, comment down below if you think things would have gone differently. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. And with that, thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.